Good morning there, folks, from Glastry House and from the big tree which I am sitting below here. Now, this week's story is a little hodgepodge of things because a friend of mine said, "Oh, Ivan, I want you to cover this story, what I'm doing," and that's okay. So then, lo and behold, doesn't he ring 2 days before the thing and say, "Oh, we can't do it, we'll have to postpone it." So I could have wrung his neck because I hadn't prepared anything else. But there you are, that's how that goes. So it's a little hodgepodge. We're getting a bit of a look round the garden, just a wee bit round the outside of the house. So that's basically it. Walk round the garden, a wee look at what's going on in the garden, and a wee bit of round the farm as well. Now, in the 1950s, my father bought this house about 70 years ago. And the house had some land with it, and my grandfather, my mum's father, wanted the land. And they wouldn't sell the house separate. So anyway, my dad was a vet. He had bought a small practice up in Lurgan and was working there on his own. And my grandfather rang him up and says, "Walter, you're to come down. The Kirkcudbright vet is retiring, buy that practice and we'll buy the farm and the old house and you can live in the house and we can get the ground in." So that was basically the story behind it. So that's the reason I was born in this house, because it was bought for the ground. So there you are. Now, the old house was owned by the Savages of the Yards, which were Norman folk, and the actual Savage that lived in here was Henry Francis, I think was his name. He's buried out at Castle Hill at Ardkeen. He was a Church of Ireland man, and in times of persecution, the Savages, being Catholic, turned or sent a son or two or a family member into the Church of Ireland, got them baptised there. Then that entitled you to hold on to your property in those times of penal laws and things. So that Henry Francis Savage lived here, so he was part of the Savages of the Yards, the forerunners of Nugent's and Nugent's estate in Portaferry. And this was a boundary line from Kirkcudbright to Glastry to Portavogie. Everything south of that down to Portaferry was owned by the Savages of the Yards, and a lot more, but in the locality. So this house originally would have been a little stone barn, fortified house, I imagine, with a pike or two and some means of protecting the boundary if there was any attacks or skirmishes. A small army could be mustered from here. Now, there is a history book on the Savages of the Yards, and there was a man in Portaferry lent me it away about 35, 40 years ago. So this is a little photocopy bit I have, because there's a little sketch of Glastry House on it and a little bit about the Savages. So we were the same Savages of Ballygelget originally, and Ardkeen, and it was Francis Savage of Glastry that lived here. So the old house at Glastry stands in its grounds in a slightly elevated position, it says, some distance from the high road leading from Kirkcudbright to Ballyhalbert. It is a large but odd looking structure, the back portion of it being considerably higher than the front, as you can see. 3 stories at the back and 2 at the front. Its original design never having been fully carried out. It's known in the neighbourhood as the Big House at Glastry. So there you are. So that's, and Francis Savage of Glastry, he was High Sheriff of County Down. So he was, and he also owned, apart from here and the ground around it, he owned several of the islands out in Strangford Lough. Now, There's other writings in this than this in the same book, Savage Yards, and it tells of moonlight hunts being held by the Savage family, and they would gather up their friends and go out on a bright moonlit night hunting on their horses. So that was the kind of lifestyle they had. So probably not nice to be working under them, I would imagine, but there you are. But that's Henry Francis Savage, and he's buried out at Ardkeen, out on the hill at the old church. As you walk in the gate at the front of the church, the main gate into the graveyard, left hand side of the main church wall, there's a vault halfway along the wall, or maybe a little bit further back, and you'll see his name on it there. I think it's Henry Francis Savage was his name. So that's a little bit about the Savages. They never finished any project they were doing. Apparently that's another wee bit of writing that was in another snippet of information. And this wall garden here, the brick wall that you can see, it was all to be completely surrounding the garden, but it never was finished. They just built one bit of it, and a bit over at the far side here where the servants' quarters were, and that was it. Now the garden was much longer at one point. It went down over the back wall of my boundary now, and down across the field another 80, 100 yards. And there was, my brother Clive has an old map from, I think it's 18s or around that, hundreds, and it shows a wee bit of a layout of the garden, the fountain in the middle of it and things. So it was a very well-to-do place, but now there's very poor people live in it. And it's said that they live on a shoestring. I don't know what it is with bumblebees, but there's always a couple of bees in the water trough drowning, floating on a wee bit of leaf or whatever's in the water. I don't know why they'd land in water. Maybe somebody could tell me. So this one here, I rescued it there a wee while ago. It was soaked, so I'm just going to put the hairdryer on it a wee bit to see if it comes round. Oops. There's wings are actually drying out there now. So that's our bumblebee rescue. He was in the water trough, dried out with a hairdryer. I've put him up there. He's not looking great, but anyway, it's as good a chance as he's going to get, and I'm sure he was half drowned. So there you go. I can see his tongue there. He's down in at, there's starting to be a wee bit of movement. When he warms up, he'll maybe fly off.